Rosalind, when are you going to start?
Kaylee's going to.
Yep.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our panel and also our parents in the audience. We are here tonight. If you are here for the Bridges in Mathematics version 3 overview, you are in the right Zoom, and welcome. Tonight we're going to be spending some time looking at the Bridges in Mathematics version 3 curriculum. Just a little background for people who don't know. Rocklin Unified District has been teaching with the Bridges in Mathematics curriculum for the past, gosh, I want to say 8 years, but it might be more than 8 years. Could be 9 years. It was an adoption back in 2016. So we think very highly of the program. And at this point, what we're looking to do is we have version 2, and we are looking to potentially upgrade to version 3 because there are some aspects of the program that we would like to see improved, and we're hoping they are in version 3. So we have teachers piloting version 3 right now. I think, Kylie, 30 teachers piloting version 3, is that correct? In classrooms. And we're going to be getting feedback from them on how that's going. So tonight is this is a parent night where we're going to give you an overview of the changes between version 2 and version 3. By the way, I'm talking a lot more than I wanted to. I'm Bill McDonald. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Elementary Education here in Rocklin. I'm going to let our other panel members introduce themselves. Kylie, you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Kylie Bray. I am a program specialist of curriculum instruction and professional learning for Rocklin Unified School District. I primarily focus on elementary curriculum and instruction and working with our teachers, and was a piloting teacher of our Bridges 2nd edition, and then have been supporting teachers with our Bridges 2nd edition, and now the review of this 3rd edition. So I'm excited to be supporting our teachers through this process.
Okay, and from the Math Learning Center, we have Rosalind Miller here. Rosalind, go ahead.
I'm a curriculum consultant with the Math Learning Center, which means that I get to work with districts and support implementation and work with teachers. And I left public education in Washington State after 30 years, a few years back. I've had a relationship with the Math Learning Center, though, since the early days in my career, and worked with them for about 20 years now with the curriculum. So I've used Bridges in my classroom and taught it to my own children even. And I'm really looking forward to working with Rocklin. I also got to work with and train teachers when Rocklin first adopted. So I have been to Rocklin.
Thank you, Rosalind. And again, if you're just coming in, we're doing an overview for parents of version 3 of Bridges in Mathematics, which is an upgrade from what we're currently using, which is Bridges in Mathematics version 2. We are actually going to jump right in. The format for tonight is Rosalind's going to present about the curriculum. There'll be opportunities to pause and ask questions from parents and audience members. You can also type questions into the chat, and then when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll go through the chat questions and answer those. But we appreciate everyone being here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Rosalind to get started.
All right, so we will just go ahead and jump right in. And you've probably heard of Bridges. That's the curriculum that you're here to learn more about tonight, but you might not have heard about the Math Learning Center, who developed Bridges. And so I'm actually going to start with just a tiny bit of background about the Math Learning Center. And as Bill said, please, as we go, if you have questions that pop up, feel free to go ahead and put those into chat. And if you haven't used Zoom much, if you look along the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat icon that you can pop up, and that'll pop up a little box that you can put your questions into. So With that, so Math Learning Center, we're actually nonprofit. And so we're based out of Oregon. We've been around since 1976 and grew out of a project that was funded by the National Science Foundation. And we were founded with the sole purpose of improving the teaching of mathematics. So as you see here, our mission is to inspire and enable all individuals to discover and develop their mathematical confidence and ability. And so we've been around for about 50 years, and our materials are implemented in thousands of districts and schools around the country, and actually dozens internationally as well. And so before I introduce Bridges, I just want to talk about some of our core values that really underlie everything that we do as an organization. So we believe that mathematics is a joyful way to make sense of the world. We're very big into sense making. And we believe that learning for deep mathematical understanding is empowering to our children and to all people. We believe that everyone can make sense of mathematics. And importantly, that all students deserve a safe and productive learning environment. So we attend to that social emotional aspect of learning as well when we're working with teachers. So tonight, you're going to see those core beliefs reflected as we explore the Bridges classroom, some of the features of the curriculum, talk a little bit about the professional learning that we offer to support implementation, and then we'll have that time for questions before we close. So again, feel free to drop questions into chat as we go, and we'll pause from time to time to give you opportunities to ask as well. All right, so let's begin with a look at the components of the Bridges classroom. So Bridges has two primary components. We talk about units and the months of Number Corner. So on a typical day, students are going to experience 60 minutes during this unit time, and then an additional 15 to 20 minutes on what we call Number Corner. And that doesn't necessarily mean 80 minutes back to back. A Number Corner might happen at an entirely different time of day. Lots of teachers incorporate Number Corner as part of their morning routine, or it might come after lunch or even at the end of the day. But across the day, you get in that time. And both of those components play a role in supporting students' conceptual understanding, their procedural fluency, and their problem-solving skills. And then together, they distribute learning for students across the entire year. And there are a variety of activities in each of these. You can see them listed here. So these are terms that the teachers are familiar with, and we'll take a look at a few of these tonight. We'll look at problems and investigations and workplaces, touch on number strings, and we'll also take a look at the calendar grid and talk a little bit more about some of these other pieces of Number Corner.
What's it like outside of the production?
So let's take a look at what students experience during a problem and investigation activity. So this is part of that 60-minute chunk of time, kind of closer to what you might think of when you think of it's time for math. So we're going to look at a session from grade 3, and this session is from Unit 2, which is probably just about where students are this time of year, or getting close to it. And this session introduces the context of Mateo's Pet Store. And it's designed to launch students' exploration of multiplication. So during sessions, teachers launch student-centered tasks and activities, and they introduce contexts like the one we see here to draw out mathematical concepts and give students opportunities to notice and wonder and get just a little bit curious about what's happening. So let's take a look at Mateo's Pet Store and start with just, what do you notice? And what do you wonder as you look at this? And you're free to drop something into chat if you'd like, or you can just think inside your own head. But what's grabbing your eye And what are you starting to maybe kind of wonder about as you look at this image? If any of you at home have a child sitting nearby, what's catching their eye? So, yeah, we see arrays. If we were in the classroom, the teacher would start annotating, writing down these things that students are saying, the things that they're noticing, the things that they're starting to wonder. Oh yeah, they're organized with like materials. So we have some grouping going on here. And the teacher would also then ask some questions like the ones you see here. We started with, what do you notice or wonder? And then we're going to look at those things that the teacher has recorded and think, so which of these observations that you made involve a mathematical description? We had that word arrays. The materials are organized. Let's talk a little more about that. And which of these questions that you were wondering about could be answered using mathematics? So when you think about these kinds of questions, think about what that experience is like for the learner, because this is the start of their math this day, looking at this image and sharing what they notice and wonder. And then as the session progresses, students are going to engage with a particular part of the pet store. So we zoom in on the dog bones. And again, students are going to notice and wonder, share their thinking, and the teacher will pose some purposeful questions. So as you look at this image, how do you think the questions, we'll get those up there, and the image of the dog bones might support this launch of multiplication? So this second question is asking, how could we find the total number? Yeah, oh, some doubling. So we can think about, I'm making an assumption here, that we have these bones paired. You might have seen them being in pairs. So we can think about doubling, like I have 4 here and I double that. And yeah, you can see the contents of some of the packages. Thank you. And not all of them. So we have an idea, but we can't see everything we'd want to see. So after students engage in this whole class discovery, then they're going to solve some problems, either independently, or with a partner or in a small group. So, and we could be doing something with bones, or we could be doing something with the price of bones. But students in the classroom are going to go off and use some visual models and some actual manipulatives to figure out the answer, and then come back and whole group do some sharing of their strategies and consolidate the day's learning to compare their solutions and strategies. So this is actually one of my favorite parts of the lesson, is when you get to hear the students thinking, and students are learning from each other, communicating their understanding. And so if we step back and just think for a minute, again, about what this experience would be like for the students, is there anything that stands out to you about what it would be like for students to experience this? So what teachers often say, I've used these same slides with teachers a number of times, and the things that often draw teachers' attention in this activity, yes, as some people are saying, it's visual, so it's easy to relate to, draws you in. Some students, they might want concrete manipulatives, and they can use those in this session. Looking at this and having that visual increases access for students. So we have a real world connection. Students in 3rd grade tend to love animals, and they might have been to a pet store. Sometimes we hear some pet stories coming along at this point. But when students are allowed to notice and wonder, they have kind of choice over what they zero in on and start thinking about, but they also get to hear the ideas of others. And we talk about having multiple points of entry. So some students here are going to start thinking about, well, how many bones do I see just in this one bag? And we might have some counting or some looking at groups to count, maybe counting by twos or by fours. Other students are going to start wondering, okay, but how much would it cost for all those bags? And so with one image, we have ways for students whose thinking and understanding is at various stages to all enter into the same work. And so that's what we're looking for, is ways that all students can successfully engage with grade level learning. So again, this is the problems and investigations is what we call it. Another component that happens during that unit time is workplaces. And here is a workplace still from grade 3, still from that same unit where Mateo's pet store showed up. This is just an approximation on the slide of what students would have. Students would have the physical materials, and we also have interactive display materials that the teachers can use. But just looking at what you see here, think for a moment about what you notice about the materials and start to think about how you think this game might work. You don't need to respond to that. Just think inside your head. So it might help give you a nudge if I say that this game is called multiplication 4 in a row. So in this game, partners take turns drawing 3 cards, and they use 2 of those cards to create a multiplication fact. Then they take their color game marker and place it on one of these addition expressions that matches their multiplication expression that they've written. So we're helping students shift from what we call additive thinking, thinking about 4 plus 4, to being able to think about 2 4s or 2 groups of 4. So we'll take a look at a round of the game together. So here are our 3 cards. And I'm going to be quiet for a minute to give you a chance to think about which 2 cards could you use to create a multiplication problem that would match one of these spaces over here on the game board. So you might have noticed that there are 8 9s down here. So we could pair the 8 and the 9. Or there's another option too. We have 4 8s here. So we could also look at that. So then we would claim one of those spaces, and it would be the next person's turn. We would replace those 2 cards. So what you see here are opportunities for students to practice within the context of a game, engage with the thinking of others, and also engage with some visual models and manipulatives often that can be brought in or are part of the games. And these give the teacher the opportunity to kind of nestle in and listen to that student thinking, and gives them a chance to do some assessing about where students are. And so one of the other features of workplaces is strategic thinking. So that means that in addition to the mathematical concepts that students are practicing here, shifting over toward thinking about multiplication, students are also engaging in strategy during their gameplay. So trying to get 4 in a row, which one do they want to choose? This one, or would they be better off with this one down here in the corner? So we have those kind of overlapping elements. But this is where a lot of the practice, as we're working toward computational fluency, takes place, is through games like this one. If you think about it, if you were thinking about which cards you might use, you were actually doing a fair amount of math in your head to figure out where you could find matches, and then to decide which one you want to actually choose. More so than if you had just been given a couple of problems on a worksheet. So we talked about problems and investigations, and then this is an example of one of those workplace games, which is one of the ways that students practice their skills and concepts. And the other component, that 15 to 20 minute chunk of time, is number corner. And so sticking with third grade, this is what a number corner display more or less looks like for September. So in number corner, we talk about workouts. That's just what we call the different parts of number corner. And number corner's primary purpose is to help distribute learning across the year, because we know it would be awesome if students had a unit of study around, say, multiplication, and they learned everything they needed to know and were supposed to know for their grade during that unit, and we just moved on. But that's not really how people learn. So with Number Corner, this September Number Corner is what comes actually the month before Unit 2 with Mateo's Pet Store is introduced. So this is ahead of the actual unit on multiplication. So we're kind of front loading for students. So take a moment, you probably have been while I've been talking, to take a look at the different kinds of math that show up here. We're going to zoom in on this calendar in just a moment so you can take a closer look. But you might see that we have some data collecting going on here. If you can't see that, it's really talking about ways we like to work in class. So students are graphing whether they like to work independently or with a partner or small or whole group. We also have a number line here up to 1,000, and one here that's counting by tens as well. So we're getting into some place value with this number path and with this number line up here. But let's get a closer look at that September calendar grid. Take a moment just to look at it. By now, you know what question I'm going to ask. What do you notice? Think about what's drawing your attention. It might be a little small. And as you look at it, can you predict what the images on the 17th and 18th might look like? This is a lot more fun in person with a group of students who can't wait to share what they think is going to happen next. Oh, okay, somebody noticed that the answer to each of the cards is equal to the date on the card. So my eye just went to these 5 apples that are here on the 5th. And a week later, I see an array, 3 groups of 4, which is 12. Oh, a prediction that on the 17th, it's going to be something round. And I would have you can you give me a thumbs up if you agree with that? I agree with that, because just when that was said, I realized I see something round here and here, and I feel like we're going in a diagonal. So that makes sense to me. And I see that happening here too. So we could go on for quite some time and students do. They have lots of predictions that they want to share. And sometimes we say, well, we'll find out tomorrow. And it kind of drives the students a little bit nuts because they want to know today if they're right. So we want math to be fun, and we want to be engaging, and we want to encourage that curiosity. So the beauty of Number Corner in general, as you can kind of see here, is the way that it allows students to engage. It allows them to notice and wonder, to make predictions without really, it doesn't really matter if they're right or wrong, right? They might make a prediction that doesn't come true, that isn't quite accurate, but they're having those conversations. And that is intentional in this workout to give students those opportunities to share their thinking. And it's intentional that this particular calendar grid, which is getting actually at multiplication, is coming up ahead of that unit 2. So when we work with arrays, when we work with what we call loops and groups of items, and when we work with ratio tables, those are all things getting at that multiplicative thinking, but in a fun way. So one thing to note before we move on is that students do not engage. There you are. You can see if you are correct. But students are not engaging. I mentioned there are 5 workouts in Number Corner. Students are not, teachers are not having to track 5 different things during this 15 to 20 minute time. Students typically, you focus on one thing like we did today. Sometimes in lower grades, they might talk about 2. And then there is some updating that happens, maybe like the calendar collector. There might still be something that gets updated there, but that's quick. It's not a big focus workout. Our conversation in one day would just be about one piece of this Number Corner. And that's part of how over the course of a month, we cover a lot of ground through these conversations. All right. This might be a good time to pause and just see if there are any questions. Feel free to unmute or put it into chat. You're also welcome to unmute if you have a question. Or Bill and Kylie, if there's something you think that people might have a question about, feel free to jump in.
Just because we're talking about the updates between the 2nd edition and the 3rd edition, can you describe one of the updates that you've done to Number Corner to make it a little bit easier for teachers to navigate for teaching wise?
So we really do listen to teachers and their feedback. And in 2nd edition, the organization of the teacher's guide for Number Corner was by workout, which meant basically each month had 5 sections, and the teacher had to kind of flip to the correct section for that day's workout. And we've reorganized it entirely so that those are organized by day. So the teacher just turns to the day that they're going to be teaching. We also made some shifts with assessment so that the assessment is better aligned and we're not trying to assess important grade level content during Number Corner. That's all in the units now. Otherwise, content-wise, it's very similar. So it's an easy transition, I think, for teachers. Otherwise, there aren't big changes. We shifted the order of a couple of months at a couple of grade levels just so that it made more sense with the units. But with that, did that answer? We're good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take, since you have a sense of the components now, we'll take a little closer look at some of the features of the curriculum. So know that Math Learning Center is committed to helping students make sense of mathematics. I mentioned that sense making at the beginning of the presentation. And the primary way we do that is through the use of really intentional visual models. So we use consistent visual models across the grades, and they're designed to build upon one another. So throughout the curriculum, students are going to use these to physically touch, to construct, to manipulate quantities and concepts. And the beauty is, again, that they provide opportunities for all students to engage and build meaningful understanding of the mathematics that they're learning, and use those models to explain and justify their thinking too. So we're going to watch a 4-minute video of a student who's using one of the models, and it's not from a whole group session like a lesson. It's actually showing a teacher working with a student off to the side, and shows it. We're using it to highlight how students use the models to support their thinking and explain their thinking. So we're going to listen in as a student, 4th grader named Ian, uses a geoboard. That's what you see here. He'll have a physical version to make sense of fractions. And we're going to see him do some reasoning about the size of and the relationship between unit fractions. So unit fractions are just fractions that have 1 as the numerator, like 1/3. Or 1/4 or 1/25. If there's a 1 in the numerator, it's a unit fraction. And if those of you here could just give me a thumbs up if we have audio.
So since we had a geoboard, I'm going to ask for you to set this up on the geoboard. And as you're thinking, we're going to think of this as one whole.
Okay.
So we want to think about, what do each of those like sections equal if the whole thing is a whole?
Can I put it into like fractions? Okay. This is half of the geoboard because, as you could see, if you cut this and
You can use a
Like,
marker and
right
actually
here.
cut it if you want.
if you were to do this to this, that's 1/2 of it.
How do you know it's a half?
Because it's cut into equal pieces, and both of them have the same amount of squares, like 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares.
How many squares are in each one?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay. So there's 8 squares in each, so they're equal.
To 16 squares as a whole. So this is 8 squares, and then let's start with a B. It'll be kind of hard to do. This is B. This is 1/4 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 squares, and then you need two 4s to make 1/2. So if basically this little piece is 1/4.
And how many squares did you say are in that?
4.
And what's the whole?
16, 4 to 16. So you need 4 of the 4s to make one whole. So if you would want it to put in a multiplication equation, you could put 4 times 4 because you need 4 of these to 4 of these, and there's like 4 in each square, 4 in each 4. So that would equal 16. And then C is, this is 1/2, this is 1/8, this is 1/4, 1/8.
How'd you figure that out?
Because it's half of the 4. How's that? This
Okay.
is 1/4, so 1/4 is 2 squares. So you need 8 of these. You could like do it yourself, but you need 2 of these to make 1/4. So you would already know you need 4 of these, so you need 8 of these because it's doubles.
Okay, could you write some of that thinking down? That's really great explaining. Like, how would you write that down with numbers
With numbers. So
or drawings, whatever?
1/8. I have to put 1/8 times 2 equals to 2/8, or if you would like, we could go to 1/4. And let's see, 4 and 8. 8 divided by 2, it equals 4. So you would already know you need 8 pieces because there's 4 of these.
All right. See if it'll let me back out of this. Oh, there we go. So we see Ian there using the geoboard to explain his thinking. And one of the things with bridges is that we've heard from a number of teachers as well that they grew up with they came into teaching with a pretty procedural understanding of mathematics. I would include myself in this group of teachers. And teaching bridges also has shifted teachers' thinking and understanding of mathematics. And I can certainly speak to that. I did not enjoy math when I was going through school. I would have laughed at you if you had told me that I was going to land in a career that I absolutely love, where I am working with math and teaching math every day, basically. But it's true. And it was because of work with the Math Learning Center early in my career that it shifted my thinking and made me realize that actually math was supposed to make sense. And I don't think I'd ever quite put that together until I was teaching bridges. And then with 2nd edition, which is what Rocklin is using now, we added what are called number strings, and those are in 3rd edition as well. And they help students learn strategies and perform mental math really well. So again, thinking about fluency. And I had been teaching those my first year of working with 2nd edition. And I was with some other adults where they threw some numbers out and they said, well, okay, but it costs this much, but then it's going to be this % off. And then you add this, and then it's this % off and whatever. And so I stood there and I just kind of talked it through out loud and, figured out whatever the total was going to be. And I looked up to realize that they were just kind of staring at me like, what are you talking about? And I thought, well, what I just did was mentally solve all those problems using the strategies that I had been teaching in my classroom and learning with my students that first year of using bridges. So it really does shift your thinking. So with these, with this, let's go to the next, see if it'll let me go. Sometimes the slides just get a little cranky. There we go. You can see here these apps. We have many of our major models available as apps. And I'm going to drop this into chat, but if you are watching the recording of this, if you were to just Google Math Learning Center and apps, you would almost certainly land on this page. And so these are available to everyone. They are free. Again, we're a nonprofit. And so these are out there for anybody to use. And we would hope that you will use them. In the teacher's guides, one of the things that we've added to 3rd edition is integrating that tech into the sessions. So we've made what we call saved states, where we've already set things up for teachers so they don't have to go build it. So we saw Ian building with the geoboard to show his thinking. Students are going to do that in the classroom. But it used to be, because I have taught that very same lesson, I had to be sure as a teacher that I had physically taken a geoboard and built it in advance with the rubber bands, or even if I was using the app, I had to go build it on the app. in advance of teaching the lesson. What we have now are these saved states where a teacher can go to the app and just enter this share code that you see here. And I'm going to show you just what that looks like. So the teacher would open up the GeoBoard app, and there's this key. This can also be shared with students. They put the key in and open it up. And we wait a moment on Zoom, and there it is, already ready for the teacher to use. And the teacher then, when using this with students, can certainly still, you can use these and interact with the materials. We can draw on here to label. Now that I changed the size of that, I have to label it differently than it would have been otherwise, but we can label it, and students can also share then what they have created, or the teacher can create something on their own and share it out with students. But we have those options. And again, if you just Google Math Learning Center and apps, you can go play with those yourself. They are free to anyone. All right. So in addition to kind of moving on from that, in addition to supporting students' understanding through visual models, we've really worked with our third edition to build in, to create a more equitable curriculum. So we want students to be able to see themselves and others in the curriculum. And we've updated our images and our context to be relevant for students. So you saw the pet store. Here you can see an image from kindergarten. And it's a story where students, again, do some noticing and wondering, and they're counting collections of things. And beyond just that representation of who students are seeing, we wanted to help educators actually support equity in their classrooms. And when we say equity, we're talking about ensuring that all students have access to the math and can make meaning and grow their mathematical understanding. So one of the things that we've done to support that is we have added sidebars in the teacher's guide, like this little sidebar you see here. We have some that are around NCTM's effective teaching practices. We have others around 5 equity-based practices that really just, these explain why what teachers are doing here is supporting all students' learning. So this is an example from a session later in that same 3rd grade unit on multiplication. And then as you saw with Mateo's Pet Store, we have attempted to build in even more open-ended tasks that are relatable to all students, and also that educators could adapt to reflect their own students' lived experiences. So again, when you see this pet store, some students are gonna really connect to something in their own lives, or we see teachers do things like change up the name or make references maybe to their local pet store, those kinds of things. But we have built in ways for teachers to help students connect their lives to the math that they're doing in the classroom. And again, that focus on fluency, I've mentioned it several times throughout the presentation. We know it plays an important role in the curriculum and in mathematics in general. So our definition of fluency aligns with that of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, as well as with Jennifer Bay Williams and John Sangiovanni. And they describe fluency as having these 3 different aspects. So efficiency, which is what we often think about, can a strategy be carried out easily? But we also think about flexibility, and can students choose a strategy flexibly? And then also, of course, accuracy. Are we getting the right answer? So we saw those workplace games, but also you'll find activities that help build fluency, like this one from 2nd grade. Students do a chart where they're charting their recall of facts and doing some self-reflecting of, okay, which facts do I think are pretty easy? Which ones are a little more challenging, but I have to think, and which are the ones that are really challenging for me? What are a few that I'm going to work on? And then also creating some flashcards to support their own understanding. And so we're really looking at, again, that sense-making piece. So here are a couple more examples of those workplaces. And then this is an example of, I mentioned the number strings. Students are given a series of problems. They don't see all of this. This is out of the teacher's guide. But when they're looking at 3 times 6, they're thinking about an array. So if we have 3 times 60, what does that look like? Then stretching that out and so forth. Developing fluency over time with a variety of strategies. So just briefly, so you know what students have and what teachers have in their sets. So every classroom gets a set of teacher guides and binders, a set of manipulatives and components. And of course, since you're transitioning, that's just going to be a few updated materials, not a whole new set of what teachers already had in their classrooms. The transition cost is much less than if you're adopting a whole new curriculum, this curriculum. Access to the new Bridges Educator site, and then we have all of our materials that are student and family facing available in Spanish on the website. So, so those are also available. Let's see. Make sure I've said everything I want to say about the materials. Just that in addition to these, there are also professional learning resources that come with it. And I'll talk a little more about that too. So how do we support implementation? Just like we do for students, we're looking at meaningful distributed learning, trying to distribute that across the year instead of giving teachers everything all at once. We also want to build local teacher capacity or local leadership capacity. So all teachers would have access to an online foundational course and a getting started workshop as well with a leader like myself. And then we have 2 more workshops throughout the year, 3-hour workshops that are remote that teachers can engage with. One is on assessment and differentiation, and the other is on instructional routines that show up throughout the materials. So, and then leaders in the district, a certain number are invited to participate in a monthly cohort where they learn some ways to better support teachers. And again, all of this that I've just been describing for professional learning is included when the curriculum is adopted or updated in your case. So one last way that we are supporting teachers is through some changes documents. So Rocklin has teachers who are really comfortable with 2nd edition. They've been using it for a while, and change can be hard. And so one of the things we've done to support teachers is give them some documents that just kind of give a quick overview of what has changed in each unit, and we break that down by session. So in transition workshops that I've led so far, teachers have been really appreciative of this, as well as to some of the changes in formatting that make it easier to read. So our goal, of course, is to limit the disruption to students' learning by making that transition easier for everyone. So, and the people who lead the workshops are all people who have used Bridges in their classrooms, and that's always been true with us. So as far as family, since you're probably a family person watching this, we have letters that teachers can share that will show you what your students are going to be learning. And we also have those in Spanish, of course. Those can be shared either digitally or printed and sent home hard copy. We have those apps that I was talking about, and I didn't point it out, but right up at the top, when you go to that app page, there's a section that says app activities, and you can choose a grade level, and there are different activities you can do with the apps. And we also have a math at home. Again, if you just Google Math Learning Center, math at home, you'll get to a page where you can choose a grade level, and it's by unit, so the activities align with what your child is doing. And so teachers might share those, or you can just go and take a look at those on your own. Some are digital workplaces, like we played. Others are like games that you would do together, or images that you would look at and talk about. So there's an example of what the page looks like. Before I talk about differentiation, which I'm just going to touch on, are there any questions about what I've covered so far, or anything on your mind? Looking at you, Bill and Kylie. No? All right. So differentiation in bridges is woven explicitly throughout the curriculum. And when we say differentiation in education, what we're saying is that we recognize that not every student in front of us is in the exact same place at the exact same time. So when we have a curriculum, we're teaching a lesson, we need to be able to make adjustments to that so that everybody can participate and everybody can make sense of the math and everybody can grow in their understanding, whether that means they have additional support to help them, or whether they need some extension to take their thinking further to that next step. So we have suggestions throughout. Workplaces have a workplace guide that gives some ideas about how to challenge or support, as well as support our multilingual learners. We have built in some examples you see here on the right of ways to challenge and support. So that what this means is the teacher doesn't have to go grab something else to figure out how to challenge and support students. It's just right there in the curriculum, ways to support the students in the moment. And then we do have both intervention and enrichment materials. Rocklin, at least with second edition, has used the Bridges intervention materials to support students. And now we have concept quests, which are extensions of what students are working on. And all teachers have access to all of these materials online. Some of the Rocklin schools also have the intervention physical materials. There aren't any for concept quests, but there are those intervention materials that align, and then the concept quests to extend. So with that, that's an example of a concept quest, but quick picture of what the Bridges Educator site looks like that teachers engage with, and notice that there's a professional learning section along with the curriculum. And this is going to bring us right to the end of the formal presentation and opening up to any questions that we didn't already answer.
Thank you, Rosalind. I appreciate that. It was very helpful. I know Kylie had asked this earlier, but is there any other, can you summarize any other major changes between version 3 and version 2 that we would see for either teachers or students? Anything that you want to highlight?
For teachers, I think that one of the biggest changes has been the addition of supports. I mentioned those supports for like the equitable implementation, the ways that teachers can meet all students' needs. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we have done is improve our assessments. We've shortened them. Students and teachers will appreciate that. We have shortened the assessments as much as possible. But we also are giving teachers additional guidance after each assessment about ways to support students based on how they did, so that teachers don't have to go figure out what to do. we're saying, here are some options. If you have some students who would benefit from some additional work, they maybe didn't meet proficiency, we don't expect that, well, too bad, we're moving on. We're giving teachers ways to continue to support those students and showing them where they'll have those opportunities in the coming months to do that, so that it doesn't disrupt the flow. They don't feel like they have to stop instruction. So that's a benefit to both, I think, teachers and students. We really did listen for teachers, 2 teachers using second edition. And so places that prep was a little bit unwieldy. And we had some teachers say, look, this prep that needs to happen for this session, I'm only using for this one session. And that doesn't make sense when it takes time to prep. So in those situations, we either said, but this is really important, so we're going to extend and make sure that you get the value with that prep, or we cut the prep and we changed the session to make it more manageable for teachers. For students, we've given teachers some really good supports of ways to engage students and help them connect with the math. So asking questions about, has anyone done this before? Or we tell the teacher, ask students, consider connecting this to a local place that's similar to this one that they're going to be reading about. So we've included those ideas for teachers, which then makes it better for students because it increases their engagement and their investment, their interest in whatever's going on. And I think they're going to see better just we updated some of the contexts. We used to have one around baseballs in 5th grade that nobody seemed to really love for a variety of reasons. We have changed that now to where students are helping design buildings for an online game. And so it speaks to games that perhaps they've played outside of school. So that increased engagement was the goal. And from what I've heard from teachers who have taught that new unit, we're hitting it. So that's good.
And that's some of the feedback that we received from some of our implementing teachers is like that first unit, the engagement is much greater because that real world context is relatable by the students more so than the previous unit. So the excitement for learning math has greatly increased, specifically in that unit and potentially in other areas at other grade levels as well. But I think that's a great example of how that experience has improved for students so that they not only make better sense of the math, but they also can relate to the real world experiences.
Rosalind, how long has version 3 been available for districts?
Last year, we had some kind of select districts. We had some limited pilots. We had some piloting going on last year. And so this is the first year that it's been available for purchase and use.
Okay. And then just because I'm curious, because we're running into this problem with another publisher is, California does have a new math framework they've adopted. There's no curriculum aligned with it yet for the state. I think we're 2 years out from any new curriculum aligned to that framework. I'm sure Bridges is planning on and putting in a new curriculum when that happens, right? In 2 years, in terms of an updated version of Bridges to match that new framework. Will you continue to support version 3 beyond that time?
Yep. Absolutely. So we'll be submitting, I don't have the timeline memorized, although I've seen it often enough, but I know that we will be, submitting our materials and that we anticipate that we'll be in alignment with California's framework. We will continue to support our different versions, more or less as long as schools are using them. So for example, second edition, we have people even this year and last year who adopted second edition. And so we will continue, I don't remember the exact cutoff date, but let's say 7 years, basically the cycle of what people typically have. So we will continue to support, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we had one publisher, not Learning Center, just tell us they're not supporting our adoption anymore. And we're like, oh, well, that's rough.
No, we have no plans to do that. In fact, we have explicitly stated that, like I said, we're continuing to support second edition for a number of years so that teachers have ongoing access to the website and to us coming in and doing support workshops or working with the districts.
Excellent. Okay, great.
I don't necessarily see any questions in the chat or anyone that's unmuted. I just want to be, very grateful to you, Rosalind, as you've walked us through this program and helped not only us and those who attended this Zoom, but then maybe families who will watch this recording later to better understand the curriculum itself, and then also the updates between what their students might be or their children might be experiencing in the classroom with the second edition, and if we end up moving forward with the third edition, what that will look like for them. So I just want to extend my gratitude for your time and efforts this evening. Thank you.
Well, and I guess then it's time for this slide and for me to say thank you. I appreciated the opportunity to come in and talk and share some little bits and pieces about Bridges. And as you know, by any means, reach out if you have additional questions. We're happy to answer them or to meet up again via Zoom to cover whatever it is you need to know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rosalind, for being here with us. And just to kind of close up, if you're watching this video, I said at the beginning, we currently have about 30 classrooms throughout the district, grades, I believe K through 5, piloting Bridges version 3, which is an upgrade from Bridges version 2 we've been using. And we're gathering feedback from teachers, and we hope by December to have enough feedback to kind of make a decision about what our next steps are in terms of upgrading to version 3 or maintaining version 2. So that's the process we're in right now. If you have questions about the process or what your child's doing in their classroom, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Bill McDonald, or Kylie Bray. That's wmcdonald@rocklinusd.org and kbray@rocklinusd.org with any questions you have. We're happy to talk this through with you. So, but again, appreciate you, Rosalind, you, Kylie, and people who attended tonight. And it's looking good. I'm excited about this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.